Drew Whitehead.
Made it on the pod.
Made it on the podcast. We'll advertise First Form. Sponsored.
Screaming Freedom, literally my favorite energy drink.
I'm saying it's really good.
I've tried a lot.
Yes.
Being in the industry I'm in, there's energy drinks everywhere.
Yes.
At every race, I choose Screaming Freedom.
Screaming Freedom is actually the most legit. And I will say, I'm biased with First Form. They have a few energy drinks that are not my fave, but Screaming Freedom is so good.
Yeah.
I don't know what the flavor is. It's got like a berryish.
Windows down, crank up the music.
America.
Yeah.
America and PRs. All right. So Drew Whitehead's on the podcast. You have been a lot of different roles in my life. You've played a lot of different roles in my life, starting when I was, 14?
14, just the yell at you role.
The yell at me role.
Yeah.
You were a coach. You have been a mentor. I'd consider you still a mentor. You've been my boss.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of like a colleague now.
Yeah, it's just evolving.
It's just evolving. So I wanted to let you give yourself a little background because you did not start in Tallahassee. You started the gym stuff and the motocross stuff in Chicago.
In Chicago, yep, Northern Illinois.
Okay. And you had 2 gyms. And you also were a trainer.
Yeah.
At Lifetime?
At Lifetime, yeah.
Okay. So what is the order of operations? Because I always forget whenever you tell me.
So my order was always loved motocross.
Got it.
Grew up watching my dad ride. He raced 3-wheelers in the wintertime on the ice. And I always thought that was super cool. So I grew up racing, got into racing when I was in my teenage years. And I ended up having multiple big injuries. So
shocker.
Injuries,
this is foreshadowing for him talking about all the athletes he works with, you guys.
So, I had one major injury, though, an ACL and a broken femur. So tore my meniscus, tore my ACL, had a broken femur. And
what accident was that from? What exactly occurred in this accident?
With the ACL, I fell and my leg twisted, and I just felt it pop.
And it was femur and ACL at once?
It was ACL and meniscus.
Oh, Jesus.
And then down the line, not even like all in the same 2 years, I also broke the femur.
Oh my God.
So
how'd you break the femur?
I actually snapped the lesser trochanter off where like the iliacus inserts.
Dude, how do you even do that?
It was a broken femur, but it wasn't like your traditional, cracked femur, get a rod in it. This was like all the way at the top, lesser trochanter ripped off. Possibly, they don't really know why, but sometimes the iliacus tears, which is your like a hip flexor muscle.
Yeah.
But for me, it ripped the lesser trochanter off.
Oh my God.
And it was essentially like if you went into the splits farther than you could possibly go, someone's got to give, and that's what gave. So,
oh my God.
Those injuries led me to be in physical therapy a lot, and my physical therapist was just kind of dropping hints at me quite frequently, like, you're really interested in this. You ask a lot of questions. You ask more questions than most people that come in here. And he's like, hey, like, why don't you think about being a trainer? So I came in with him, did some interning, and kind of started to fall in love with it. But at the time, I was in college for business.
Okay.
And
so you were 18, 19 at the time?
Yeah, I was like 18.
Okay.
I was going to DeVry. It's like a technical school.
Okay. And you were going to college for business because your parents.
Yeah, I just had to.
Essentially, you had to go to college. Yeah.
And
you're like, this motocross shit ain't it, dude.
Yeah. Well, and I also didn't want to be. My dad's a rough framer, carpenter.
Okay.
And builds houses, and I was doing that with him a lot, and I was like, this really isn't for me. Like,
right.
I don't want to be up on a roof in the wintertime.
Yeah.
So I was just searching during my racing times, and one of my buddies, his name's Ian. He was like, sent me this photo of, it was called National Personal Training Institute. So he's like, hey, let's go. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, let's just go. I'm like, all right. So I go, I tell my parents, I'm like, hey, I'm dropping out of college. I want to go to National Personal Training Institute. And they were like, finish up this associates, and then you can switch. So I finished up those first 2 years, switched into MPTI, and my life has been in the gym and fitness ever since then. So I went through national personal training courses. They have a 6-month program. You go every day, 5 days a week from like I think 9 until 2 or something.
That's sick.
And then I would train clients there after it.
Yeah.
The clients got to train for free because I was just the intern.
Yeah.
Did that, and then I immediately got hired into Lifetime Fitness.
That's really cool. Honestly, in some ways, I wish that they had that something more like that as a requirement for training, just because the certification qualifications now are so low.
Yeah, it
I mean,
wasn't
for
a
me, it
weekend
was
cert.
for me it wasn't a weekend cert, but it was 2 months of my NASM. And I mean, you have 6 months to take it, but if you take 6 months to take it, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know? So when I first got, I mean, I didn't know shit about shit. And 2 months in, I don't remember anything from NASM except for reciprocal inhibition.
Nice.
Yeah. And post-activation potentiation.
Maybe like a overhead squat assessment.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
No, we ain't going to talk about that. So then you worked at Lifetime, and whenever you describe Lifetime to me, it truly reminds me of like when I was in, like, I had to walk in the snow.
Back when,
I had to walk in the snow when I was your age.
Well, for me, I was
because you had to wear like the vest.
Yeah,
you had it so rough.
Like, I think I had to like paddle both ways, uphill both ways type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I worked at Lifetime.
And you truly were. When you're my boss, you were like, you don't understand how easy you have it here. I had to freaking wear a vest that said I sucked, basically, and then still try to make money.
Yeah. What Lifetime taught me was how to talk to people.
Yeah.
And how to generate leads and how to essentially get people to want to get in front of you as a trainer. So they would do things that were pretty drill sergeant like we had to wear a red vest at the top of the stairs, and I had to get like 30 people's names a day. And once you got 30 people's names a day, then you wouldn't have to wear the red vest anymore.
How did you convince people did you ever get to a point where you're like, dude, just give me your name?
Yeah, at first it was just a bunch of shots in the dark. Just, hey, how's it going? You want to work out? And then I started to realize, like, I'm seeing these people frequently.
Yeah.
So I would start to learn their names, and then I would go chat with them on the treadmill and say, hey, hope you have a good workout. Then it just turned into me having a good system where I could figure out what someone was struggling with that day and then offer to help them for like 15 minutes. And repeating that cycle, especially at a place like Lifetime, there's 13,000 members. You get a lot of people in front of you. So it's really overcoming the imposter syndrome of like wondering what they're going to think about you when you have that conversation. And then overcoming the objection of like the 8 people that like
said fuck off.
Yeah.
How do you get to that place? Because that was actually, probably remember with me, that was one of my biggest, like I hated that.
Yep.
And so what kept you going back? Because honestly, I don't think that I would have been like, fuck this red vest. I'll go somewhere else. Like this ain't for me. What kept you going back? Was it like, I just don't want to go to business school? I don't want to be
I think
a tradesman?
For me, I like to be competitive.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things at Lifetime is we had a team of like 30 people. So I wanted to get to the top of that team. And along with that also came better pay structure. So when you're a level 1 trainer, you're making less percentage of the money that comes in than when you're a level 5 trainer. So I was highly motivated to like kind of work up the ladder and also be a leader. I didn't want to be told that I had to wear the red vest. And I knew that I loved the gym and I knew that I loved fitness. So I don't know exactly why I took that path or how it worked out, but I showed up.
Yeah, well, I think that same quality is what brought you to the next path in your life, which was, well, I'm going to do this myself now. Because then you opened your own place. Yeah. Because you started developing. Would you say that the niche started developing already?
Yeah.
As you moved into
I was always looking at developing programs.
Yeah.
And looking back, they weren't always great programs.
Yeah.
Right. But I always did want to develop programs. And what I was running into at a corporate company is that you get shut down a lot because you launch the same programs that all other 72 gyms are launching. So I was getting to the point where I was getting really frustrated with that. And I'd met a guy at the gym that was wearing a motocross shirt. So I saw that he had a motocross shirt on. I went up to him, started talking.
Yeah.
He became my client. We trained together like 3 days a week for probably a year. And he became a really close colleague of mine and a mentor of mine. And he offered for me to open up a gym with him inside of his chiropractic office.
Yes.
So the first gym that I did was a 1,500 square foot small personal training studio. And I just made the jump one day. I was like, all right, like I'm going to leave Lifetime and we're going to go in on this.
Yeah. I understand how you feel. Considering we're in my like 200 square foot garage.
Not too much bigger than this, honestly.
Yeah, right. But it's, what did it feel like when you first made that jump? Was it scary? Was it more exciting? Were you just kind of like, fuck it, we'll do it live kind of mentality?
I think the scary part was like breaking up with Lifetime.
Yeah.
And
that was the worst part for me.
Yeah.
Was just deciding that you're going to go and then having the sit down and being like, I'm leaving.
Yeah. And like, when's the last day and how does that work?
Yeah.
And for me, it was, hey, I have another opportunity. I'd like to, help you guys transfer and take over my positions. And that turned into like, no, you're leaving right now and we're not going to see you again. So the second that I had that conversation, I pretty much got the boot and I had a 1 year non-compete. So for 1 year, I did in-home training.
Okay.
And kind of started to dabble a little bit with like just programming for people. Back then, it wasn't like on the computer or through an app. It was just more text messaging and sending pictures and stuff like that. And then after my non-compete was up, we had the gym done in the chiropractic office and we launched that facility. And the way that it worked out, it was literally across the street.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so,
every morning,
like we could see the building. That's how close it was.
That is hilarious.
I did let that non-compete go for the full year before we.
Yeah, dude, because they would be like, "What is he doing over there?"
And it wasn't really to like. I wasn't doing it in spite.
No, it just
Lifetime.
happened to be that way.
That's where the office was.
Yeah. And then so you went from there to you opened another place.
Then I branched off and
you had like a warehouse.
Separated from the chiropractic office and did an athlete gym called Pro
Yeah.
And it was mainly triathletes, endurance athletes, motocross athletes. We did run some transformation boot camp style classes also.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a warehouse gym, like no AC.
Through and through warehouse gym, dude.
Yeah.
That was when you were doing your American Ninja Warrior shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
And that's when I was kind of out of motocross myself, not really riding much, but still had a pretty good sized motocross program in there.
Yeah.
But I was personally training for American Ninja Warrior.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen your actual video. I've only seen your audition video.
Yeah, well,
I've tried to find
it on YouTube.
Dude, I have tried to find it so many times of you actually doing American Ninja Warrior, and I haven't yet. So when I find it, you'll be getting a text from me.
It was the early days, like 2012. Like things were starting to be posted everywhere.
He was doing some cool shit though. You were doing some. You were like hopping from like stability ball to stability ball.
Yeah.
I was like, dang.
That was more just because I wanted the producers to pick me.
Yeah, just look cool. You're like, this makes no sense, but it looks awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So you went there, and then you fell in love.
So I went there, and that gym we had for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And during the time that we were there, I had the opportunity to come down south. That was up in Chicago.
Yeah.
Had the opportunity to come south to run a motocross program over the winter. So we came once with a motocross trainer and myself.
Because what you don't know is was Cairo always, is it Cairo always kind of the Mecca?
It has been since like the early 2000s.
Okay.
And brought a group of motocross guys down to South Georgia, Cairo, and ran a boot camp, and then went back north, still had the gym up there, and was like, man, I really don't want to be up here in the winters. I don't even know if I want to be up here. And then opportunities came around for me to come down here full time. So
whatever, dude. He fell in love.
Yep. And
whatever, dude.
The first time I came down here, I had met Julia.
Yes.
And we started talking, and now she's my wife. We have a daughter now and married and everything.
Yes.
But ended up going back only for a short amount of time, like a month or two, and then came back down and
very quickly
been here ever since.
Yeah. which is awesome. And so you started working at Gold's, which then became Momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we met.
Yeah.
Eventually. You were a trainer, but you're also working at Go Performance, and you're doing the group classes. And that's when my little shit ass came in.
Yeah.
14 years old. Cocky as shit. And I don't know what you saw in me, but you saw something, because in many ways, Drew has always been, I feel like you've always been the guy that's like, you're not on, like you're not like on the person, but you're kind of just like always sort of guiding from a distance.
Yep.
And just throughout the years, you were kind of that person that would sort of like float in, be like, hey, Abigail, you know, like, I'm going to teach you some shit, and I'm going to float out, and then I'm going to float back in, and then I'm going to float back out, float back in. Partially also probably because I was super annoying and you could only handle me in doses.
Yeah.
But I just, I'm curious as to what you saw then, because my perception, looking back of who I was, I think I would have been like, no, get this bitch away from me.
Yeah. I saw your work ethic in fitness.
It was psycho.
And you loved fitness so much.
Yeah.
And if you have a true passion for fitness, that's one part about being a trainer. So there's something to work with there.
Yeah.
Or the other side of it is you might be really good with relationship and, you know, personal relationship skills. And that's another side of being a trainer.
Yeah.
You didn't have the relationship stuff.
No.
But you loved fitness and you always showed up. And for me, I was looking at building a team. And look, you know, as the years went on, we did become a team, and it was pretty awesome. So I saw that you loved fitness and that you were always studying it, and you would be working out and you would be asking me questions all the time. And it was just kind of like a pay it forward situation, because I'd been there and someone did that for me. So one thing that I was always doing is looking at, you know, the youth kids who are trying to figure out what they want to do, and just kind of drop the bit if it's something that they're interested in and want to do it. Like, this is an opportunity and you can do this for a living. Yeah. If you do it right.
Yeah. And I think you have a real talent for being able to see talent. I think you have a real ability to mentor, because the way that you mentor is it's not aggressive or abrasive at all. It's very just like it was like a very natural mentorship, I think. And you let me fuck a lot up, which was good. Like, I think that I needed to fuck a lot of stuff up. And I also needed to have a couple of moments where you sat me down and you were like, hey, dude, you're being a dick. Yeah. Like, you're doing this wrong. And whereas I think most people, when they think of mentor, they think of somebody that's just like a Mr. Miyagi or something, who's just like around all day. Yeah. Who's just like teaching you absolutely everything. Yeah. And you were that person that throughout God, I've known you now for 10 years. Yeah. You just sort of always floated in and floated out. But you, in that time period, you were my coach, and then I became a trainer, and then you were my boss, and then you were kind of like coach boss, and then you were boss. Yep. And now, since we have both left Momentum, and now we're both just doing the thing, and you have full sent since then into the niche that is motocross. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about niches and how that is, if your thoughts have changed on it, and how maybe having a niche has been helpful, where you feel like it hurts you, if you had any notions about it beforehand, because I know that I definitely struggled with that and continue to struggle with it. So.
Yeah. Motocross has always been my like biggest passion that I have. So I've always wanted to figure out how to monetize and being able to make a living in motocross. And if you're not the best racer in the world, you're not making a living at it. Yeah. So over the years, I've always dabbled in training motocross riders, but I didn't really have it figured out to the point where I could train them full time and also live the lifestyle that I wanted to live. So, you know, when I met you, I was a trainer making most of my money training people, and then also having some motocross people. And then you and I both kind of went up the ladder together of like, you became a trainer, I became a manager, then you became one of the better trainers, and I became the owner of the business. And during that whole time, though, I was pushing into moto, and the Momentum became a really big motocross gym in Tallahassee.
It did.
But it wasn't only moto. There was so many things going on in my daily like on my daily schedule. That
he under exaggerates that so much when I say like he was literally running the business, basically was also a janitor, was basically also a coach of the coaches, making sure that you were checking in on the coaches, also a trainer, also like you were legitimately wearing all fucking hats. And you didn't, I mean, it got to a place where you wore them okay for a while, but it was just, then you were just like sick all the time. You weren't working out. No.
My true passion, right? And
no.
If you're a gym owner, you know the feeling, like you got to wear a lot of hats. I think a business owner in general, and compartmentalizing and delegating is really helpful. But to me, I was not going the direction that like I knew I wanted to go long term, which is be in the sport that I wanted to be in and train athletes in the sport that I want to train in. So when I decided to part ways fully with Momentum, then I was like, okay, for 10 years, I've been talking about doing this. I'm like, I just need to actually do it.
Yeah.
And by now, 2024, there's many other trainers that have done this before in different avenues and different sports, in different categories of fitness. So I really dove into figuring out what they were doing and how they were doing it, and then applying that to what I'm good at, which is motocross training.
Yes. How did you get to a place where you could be okay with letting some of the other stuff go and really delving into motocross? Because there's not just a dip in potential business, but there's a dip in finances. There's a dip in maybe even like confidence, because you're just like because there's a dip in the other things. There's a dip in like, oh, okay. And then you're putting a certain level of more time, effort, energy into something that's not giving you a quick return. Mm-hmm. So how did you get to a place where you could do that, be okay with it? And how's it working for you right now?
So I would say all of it's been brewing for a while. So even though
you've been building reputation for so long. Yeah, because he's been working with top moto guys for you have a couple of pro guys that you've had for forever.
10 years of training pros.
Yeah.
And then 5 years of having really top guys in the sport. So it's been brewing. I don't know how possible it is just to go like all in, all at once, and have it shape up as quickly as it has for me. Because when I'm looking at it, it has not shaped up quickly.
Yeah.
It's been me saying since 2014 that I was going to do this full time, and kind of like going out and then getting back in and going out and getting back in. So I think that because of the situation where I no longer had the gym anymore and I knew I had time, the time was right for me to go all in. And what I did is I started talking with facilities and talking to racers and talking to other coaches and just telling everyone, this is what I'm doing now. Doing an Instagram post saying like, hey, this is me. I'm a trainer. I'm no longer a gym owner. And that's kind of what got me going on. It was just the time allowance that I had, that I got a family, we got a house, I got bills, right? So I wasn't doing it because I thought it was something I might like.
What took you so long? What took you so long in terms of the decision process to full send it?
Yeah. Other opportunities.
Which is what we were talking about before this podcast started.
So like, if you're someone who is consistently learning and can have good conversations with people, I think a lot of opportunities tend to come up.
Yeah.
And for me, I was having a lot of different opportunities and different like visions cast for my future of where I might be able to go, and people want to partner and this person wants to do that. And it all seems awesome. And it's like a really good feel good thing. Like, I got this opportunity, I should do something with it.
Yes.
And, looking back, if I would have went all in on building a motocross platform 10 years ago, I probably would be farther ahead.
Yeah.
Right. But I had other opportunities, and it is what it is. I don't regret them. I learned a lot over that course of time.
You learned about running a business, leading. I mean, yeah. What do you think is a misconception about that you may have had? And then what's a misconception you think others have about establishing a niche and really full sending it in a niche?
I think a misconception is just because you like it recreationally, that it's your thing.
Yes.
From all aspects of being a personal trainer, you know, there's a lot of people that just like going to the gym, so they think they need to be a trainer.
Yep.
Or they like riding a bike, so they think they want to train people to ride bikes. But there is a lot more to it than that. So I think you have to have the passion for it, but you also have to be willing to do all the things it takes on a daily basis. Like my life is absolutely engulfed in racers.
Yeah.
And dealing with their problems and managing their schedules and working around their injuries. It's not just all this fun and games of seeing them race on the weekend. So it's like, do you like it? And do you actually want to do that every single day? Or is it something you like because it's your escape? And if it's your escape, making it your profession might not be the way you want to go with it.
Yes, and you can never escape it.
Yeah.
ever.
Let's say for you with like jujitsu, right? If that's kind of like your time that you check out and do your own thing, if you went all in and only trained people,
I would have hated it.
You know, it might not be something that you enjoy so much anymore. So I think those are things that need to be thought through.
Yeah.
Sometimes live and learn, right?
Yeah.
But it is something that I've seen so many trainers over the years dive into training because they like fitness.
Yeah.
Or racers who are like, yeah, I want to be a trainer because I like racing. But there's more to it than that. So
I agree with that. What do you think is a misconception that you had about niches? About going into a niche?
For me, it was that my niche was too small.
Yeah.
And that there's too many people already doing it.
That's real.
So if it's a smaller niche, like motocross is a smaller industry.
It's a big injury.
It's a smaller industry, right?
It's a fuck ton of injuries, though. Like, you don't understand when you say you can't escape it and the amount of work that he puts in. Like, it's not just like, hey, here's your program, here's the thing. It's like, hey, it's raining today. We got to completely switch the plan. Hey, dude, I broke my fucking wrist. We got to completely switch the plan. Yeah. So, but anyways, continue.
But that it's too small and that there's already too many people doing it. And especially in the days of social media, you can see like who's doing what. And that feeling of like imposter syndrome and there's no place for me here can be a strong feeling. And I felt that big time 10 years ago. And I think that is one of the reasons why I didn't jump all the way in.
Which is crazy because when I think of motocross coaches, I just think it like, I'm just like, it's just Drew. Drew's the only one. Like he is the guy. So it's just fascinating to me that when you're in it, you see all the other coaches, you see all the other, that's your thing. So you see everything. And so it feels so saturated.
Yeah.
But really it's just this little pinpoint of your niche that's your circle now.
Yeah. And you know, nowadays I'm friends with most other trainers.
Yeah.
And we've got a group on Instagram that's not all, a lot of the top coaches in the industry. And we're sharing exercise videos or sometimes ripping exercise videos apart and like, why are you doing that? But it has become a really cool collaboration. And everyone in this group, we all realize that we're not the same, but we are working toward the same common goal with a lot of people. And we've realized that there is more people. There's more people to talk to. And it's not something that you kind of need to keep everyone to yourself. Like there is more people that need help in the industry. And I don't need to worry about another coach that does it also.
Yeah, everybody eats. There like truly is enough room for everyone at the table, I think. For me, with the niche that I've been going into, it's interesting because I'm coming at it from a different lens, which is crack open, screaming freedom. The ASMR.
Woo!
Yeah. America. So with my niche, though, that I've been sort of delving into, it's not necessarily because I'm in the sport. So it's different because for me, I have a different imposter syndrome, which is I'm not necessarily an endurance runner. Like I've done endurance races, but that's not my thing. You know, I love to lift. I love to train jiu-jitsu. I love self-defense. I also love endurance training. I love all of it. But I really am passionate about human movement and biomechanics. And you see that quite literally when people run, you know, whether it's at long durations, slower velocities, or you're seeing it at top speed in sprinters. It's very, very fascinating to me. And it's something that really passionate about. And so that's why I've gone into the niche of, and also through all the years of hurting the shit out of myself and dealing with runners who suck at moving, especially endurance athletes. They don't strength train and they're constantly dealing with injuries and they're getting pulled from the sport that they love. That's something that I also am really passionate about being like, okay, the most frustrating thing for me was I'd get hurt. I didn't know what was wrong and I didn't know how to fix it. Mm-hmm. And now I can't do the thing that I really like to do. And that's a horrible feeling. And so being able to take endurance athletes and get them to a place where it's like, hey, I think I know what's going on. We can solve this problem. We can get you back to your sport. And then we can also have you performing long-term at a pretty high level doing it is something that I've loved doing. So for me, it's interesting because I think my misconception was not necessarily that there's no seat for me. It's like, you don't deserve a seat at the table because you don't know it like all these other endurance coaches do. And I had to realize like, well, I'm not an endurance coach. I'm a strength coach. I'm a performance coach for endurance athletes.
Yep.
So, and you go a little bit farther, you'll handle you'll have a couple of your pro guys. You have people that you just do strength and conditioning for, but then you have like your top guys that are like in your in your small circle where you're doing the whole season with them, essentially. Like you're traveling with them, you're looking at their nutrition, you're looking at their exercise daily, like you're looking at their moto training, you're looking at everything.
Yeah. And I think it's situational, like training like Ironman triathletes. A lot of times I'll collaborate with an actual Ironman coach.
Me too.
And they'll run the program of like swim, bike, and run volume.
Yep.
But beyond that, there isn't too much to it. So that's where I step in with more strength conditioning type stuff. So I think depending on the athlete, sometimes I do provide more or less.
Yeah.
For you, with the athletes you're working with, when you first started working with endurance athletes compared to now, what are a couple of things you're doing differently?
What are a couple of things I'm doing differently? I think I just know more now, and I know more about, because I've worked with athletic populations, not even just endurance athletes. One, I think with athletic populations, it's your volume is additional to all of the other volume that they have. This is not like Susie Ann who's coming in Gen Pop and just sees you 3 times a week. This is somebody who's already got 30 to 50 miles a week on their body, and they're coming in here as an addition. Or they've got soccer, if they got cross country, whatever their sport is, so that's something that I changed. Is like, you're not the most important thing. You're an important piece, but like, you need to be very careful about the volume that you choose in here and what exercise we're choosing and how we're loading and everything like that. And then for endurance athletes, the way that I've changed is understanding things about human movement, and then also understanding the athletes that are in front of me, which is most endurance athletes. You can see all the cool, tricky stuff, and you can see all these people and be like, oh, Olympic lifts and all, and you could, this helps with power, and this helps with speed, and this helps with rate of force development, whatever. But if someone comes into me and they don't lift really, which is most endurance athletes, and they haven't lifted in forever, and they don't know how to move well, like, our sessions they look boring. They can look boring, and they kind of are boring, because that's the stuff that's going to get them to a place where they can improve stability and move better long term. And being okay with not being the coach that's like, oh yeah, I had my client clean this amount of weight. Yeah. Like, I don't care. I had them do a freaking foam roller glute bridge sprinter, and we did some protraction planks, and we did some rows, and we did some squat variations. And like, that was it. I sent them on their way, but guess what? They had a killer run. They don't feel Achilles pain. Like, their hip doesn't hurt anymore. Their hamstring feels good. So
yeah, you're focused on the outcome.
Yeah.
Not the wow factor.
Yeah.
Of the session.
And I think that was a big thing, is just when you look at the niche, right, and you're seeing everybody in it, and you see all the coaches, you see only the wow factor, because that's what a lot of coaches post. And so I was looking at all of that, and I'm like, oh my God, well, that's not me.
Yeah.
But then I had to always come back to, okay, well, who's in front of me right now? What are my clients saying? And as I've been continuing to work with clients now, pretty much the only clients that come to me are endurance athletes. Like, that's what's getting brought to me, because word of mouth, people are just starting to feel good. They're starting to run better. They're starting to move better. And I had to let go of the ego of, well, I don't really look like that coach, but who cares?
One thing that you did for me was, as you started to develop as a trainer, and because of your studies and how much you like to study.
Oh man.
I remember a point maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I was like, she's going to be a much more sound trainer than I am when it comes to actual writing programs and having the exact reason why you do everything you do with an athlete. I saw that in you like maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
I remember
that
you
was
saying it.
developing. And I remember like a couple years ago, one thing that I've changed because of you was I took out a lot of the fluff that isn't really necessary, especially when you're looking at total volume on the athlete.
Yeah.
And just like doing things in the gym that don't get you a big output. I don't remember exactly the workout, but there was a time when you were like, why are you doing all that?
I was such an asshole,
why are
you guys.
doing all that? Like, you don't need to do all that. And
yeah.
So keeping it simple and a little more boring, and maybe doing some cool shit every once in a while to, you know, get some views on Instagram, but
Right.
you know, a much more simple strength and conditioning program compared to all this other crap that you can do and all the advertisements you get of things you can buy and, you know, whatever, standing 1 foot on a Bosu while doing random shit.
Dude, right.
Like, looks impressive, but is there anything that shows that it actually transfers into the sport? Not so much. So
Right.
I cleaned up my programming because of that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, honestly, and I get why you did that. Now, looking back, I mean, I was just a shit and I was an asshole, so I would mess with you all the time just because. But you came from Lifetime, which was you're trying to compete with other trainers. You're also kind of trying to do the showy stuff, and you're working with, again, like a Sally Ann, who she wants to do. Some of them want to do the weird shit. You know, some of them it doesn't matter because they come in 3 times a week, and you can essentially just throw as much volume as that you want at them, and they're fine. Like, they're still getting probably just enough stimulus
because they're totaling 3 hours a week.
They're not doing anything else. Exactly. And so what I'll do now is I have kind of a structure for how I lay out my sessions. And then at the end, once the major lifts and the major things that I've covered are covered, I'll do something where we're still getting the intent out of, but then I can throw in the fun stuff. So if I want to train the obliques, right? If I'm like, all right, let's do some oblique work, we might do a cable chop. We might do a side plank row. We might do a side bend. We might do, you know, that's where I'll start adding in like, okay, now we can switch it up and give them some variability, and we can give them this sensation of new stimulus. But really, ultimately, every week I'm training their obliques, I'm training their QL, because that's what I need them to rotate and I need them to move. So that's essentially what I do. But I think that goes really well into what I also want to talk about, which is collaboration, and not just with coaches. You made a great point, just collaboration with other people in the in any health and like health and fitness in general, and how you utilize that. Because I know I use it because I work with triathlete coaches, I work with running coaches, I work with PTs, I work with Doc Haley, I work with nutritionists. But for motocross, I mean, it takes a fucking village, for real.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think that having the mindset that you're going to help the athlete by collaborating with everyone around them, rather than my job is so important that I need to keep this all to myself. That really helps an athlete progress. So in racing sports, mainly for me, it's ATV, motocross, and snowmobiles, which all of them, way you could look at it, they're all handlebar racing. So you're holding on to handlebars. I don't really train any sports where you have a steering wheel, but they're all motorsports that you have a handlebar, even though they're a little different machines, and they're dangerous. So we're
especially
looking at
snowmobile, dude. How heavy is that shit?
Yeah, they're like over 400 pounds. Yeah. So it's not all just me. Like the strength conditioning in the off season, it is a lot of me. And most of what they're doing is stuff that's coming from me. But then once an injury pops up, or an athlete starts to get stressed, or they start to show signs of slow recovery, like elevated resting heart rate, low heart rate variability, their body temperature's off, it becomes a lot more than just me at this point. So one of my valuable points that I can bring to an athlete's program is I have other people that are really good at those other areas that I can introduce into the program. Or by now I have enough experience that I can also reach out and chat to whoever it is that they already have. So In my world, it's typically a physical therapist, some type of sports performance psychologist or mindset coach, normally an orthopedic and
Yeah.
like a neurologist or something like that.
Yeah.
And then also you have the other side, which is their support system. So their mom, their dad, their girlfriend, the team owner, their sponsors, anyone that is around them all the time that's impacting them. So the better job that I do of getting a grasp on that athlete's whole community around them, like I'll have an athlete's dad call me and say, hey, I noticed this about my son, and I just want to let you know. But the athlete never told me that. Right. So it helps me as a coach, and it also helps the athlete by forming community around people instead of just being that guy that stays in his lane and only does strength conditioning. That is where my program comes into play. But I can help an athlete in a much bigger picture by introducing them and collaborating with the people around them.
Yeah, I don't know if you feel this, but to me, it almost alleviates that weight that you feel like you have as a coach too, a little bit, because then you don't take you don't have to take responsibility for every single thing that happens, because you know that you're just one moving part in a huge machine, which is like, yeah, I do this thing and it is an important piece. However, all of these other pieces are fundamental to the athlete's success. And this is where I think my limitation has been met. And so let me go grasp at this other person in my circle and have them now come in and take over.
Yeah. And a lot of times, especially for newer athletes, they don't have that person. So by me having a network already built, it's super valuable. And also new athletes that come in that do have other doctors or other sports psychologists, me getting introduced to them, that all creates a really big referral network. So these conversations and showing them who I am makes a big difference for the amount of people that contact me on a monthly basis or a yearly basis to inquire about what I do. Yeah.
When it comes to your strength and conditioning program, other than removing fluff, is there anything in particular that you've changed over the years?
Yeah. We lift heavy and less, where years ago we would lift. It's an endurance sport, right? So we need to do endurance reps.
Yeah.
And we need to do a lot of them.
Yeah.
I don't really do much of that anymore. Now there are times, like let's say right now up north, it's winter. So I've got athletes that aren't riding at all. In the summertime, I would rarely ever do any type of circuit or anything like that. But in the wintertime, we will do some circuit training where it's, like kettlebell swings into jump rope, into a skier, into an air bike.
Because they got to get their heart rate up.
Into some type of plyo. Yeah, and I do higher reps there and try to fatigue them and get into that different energy system. But it's really uncommon unless they're not on the bike. Right. Where before they'd be on the bike doing all this endurance stuff. Motocross is 190 heart rate for 20 to 30 minutes. And then we would go in the gym and do like circuit training, because motocross is 190 heart rate for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Whereas I've learned more over the last 15 years of developing an aerobic base, developing a VO2 max, getting actually stronger to absorb the impacts. There's a lot less endurance training and a lot more strength training and base building.
Yeah, especially when you're operating the 400-pound, the sled.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be so strong to just be able to like maneuver your body and be
aware of where your body is and how to absorb impact.
Which also requires a lot of recovery and proper volume management.
Yeah.
And if you're like heart rate up all the time.
Yeah.
And then you get back on that snowmobile, you're like, dude, I feel like shit.
And with the development and introduction to like wearable devices into our industry, it's made a big difference in helping track recovery. So now, like I train in a program called Training Peaks, and it automatically syncs up with like Oura Ring and Garmin. So as long as my athlete is wearing like their wearable device, their Oura Ring or their Whoop, whatever they have, I get up in the morning, I pull up Training Peaks, and I see everything in there. So it makes it really easy to manage their program, where 10 years ago they didn't have those things. So
yeah.
you're like,
Hey man, how you feel?
yeah, how you feel?
I feel
And
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where now we have blood work, we've got wearable devices. It's very measurable to get someone through the season without tanking, compared to 10 years ago, where it still happens, but a lot of people are getting like Epstein-Barr virus and run down and mono
Yeah.
and sick all the time, where now we can manage an athlete's performance much better.
Yeah. So before I let you go, what are the next, what's like future vision?
So speaking of collaboration and speaking of like,
Oh my God, you guys,
developing,
we're about to collaborate right now. He's about to drop a deal.
Speaking of collaborating with like young athletes, right? So
Yeah.
I've been training an athlete named Jace Owen since 2014, and he was going.
Do I know Jace?
You known him from the gym. He rolled through when he was in town.
I know Jace.
But yeah, Jace Owen was one of my athletes I trained for 10 years, all the way through. He had a 10-year pro career, multiple time champion, raced in all different countries, raced the United States main series, and he retired like last year. He bought a facility, and now him and I are collaborating, and we've come up with they're called progression sessions. So we're doing in-person one-day camps, and we just dropped the dates on them. They're on my Instagram as well as Jace's. So this summer, Jace and I are collaborating to bring fitness and on the bike technique, and really look at like what's a day in the life to be successful in this sport, to youth racers as well as adult racers who want to know what it takes to get to the next level. So
That's sick.
we just dropped that like yesterday, and we haven't
Let's go.
we haven't actually like released all the details yet, but you'll see them getting slowly released. But the first camp is in March, and Jace purchased one of the most prestigious tracks in Illinois. It's going on its 50th year, and currently one of my loves is building gyms, and we're building the gym up there.
Aw,
so
dude.
It's got no floors in it, no walls, nothing right now, but got all the equipment, and we'll post some videos soon of like what's going on in there. But essentially an athlete will come in and we'll do a warm-up morning in the gym, teach them about food, teach them about supplementation. Then they go out on the track, learn from Jace, one of the best in the world, have some breaks where we teach them, because a lot of athletes cramp out throughout the day.
Yep.
They don't eat enough. They don't recover. They run around in between, and then they have no energy on the bike. And then at the end of the day, we'll get them in the gym and just teach them the fundamentals. It's just one day, so it's not going to be every possible thing that you need, but it will answer a lot of the problems and a lot of the questions that a lot of amateurs and people getting into the sport have. So our goal is to help them progress, and if they keep showing up, they should keep getting better. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Okay, so where can people find you? On social, coaching, that kind of thing.
Yeah, my main platform is Instagram, DW Performance on Instagram, at DW Performance.
Yeah, come on, guys.
And from there, you can find everything else.
Yeah, link in bio.
Yep.
Link in bio. Thanks, Drew.
Yep. Thank you.
Always
It was
a
a pleasure
pleasure. Always a
collaborating.
pleasure doing business with you. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. We got Doc Haley coming on next. So
Screaming freedom, baby.
screaming freedom, baby. Bye.